Alright, so I actually had people request this video a long time ago. Over a year ago, and I was like, yes, we'll get to this, and I never got to it. I wanted to do a lot more preparation, but I just want to make this video quickly so we can do a follow-up video on this with more references to research, perhaps even an interview with someone from maybe the site examine.com, something like that. But the video is about marijuana and its effect on fat loss and muscle growth. And I'm gonna share a little backstory for you. But I think I did a poll on my Instagram at Grow Gallagher, and a lot of people were interested. Like 85% of people, or 88% of people were interested in a video on this. As well, you know, I think a solid amount of my audience, maybe 35% or so, I think it was in the 35%, so 1/3, almost just over 1/3 of my audience uses marijuana at least once a week. And so it made sense to kind of create this video. And of the people that didn't use it, 1/3 of those people were scared that it might affect their fat loss or muscle growth. So this is definitely a important video to do. And I had, you know, I'll give you a little backstory. Growing up, I just had no interest in marijuana. I had no interest in smoking weed. I didn't really go to that many parties, but when I did, if it was offered to me, I just was like, no, I'm good. And that continued until I would say my mid-20s, till I was like 24, 25. I may have smoked weed like a few times, like from my whole life till I was 24, and then I kind of played. Then at 24, I kind of flirted around here and there with edibles. Just it was fun to take a little edible and just knock out and just sleep like a baby. And I would sometimes get in the habit of where I'd go like months without ever touching an edible, and then I'd order edibles and I'd do them like at night, like, you know, here and there. And so I was able to kind of actually get real world experience from my personal self, and I want to share that with you. And there's not that much research on marijuana and fitness, marijuana and muscle building. Some people have done some articles and they've linked to some research, and I know at examine.com they find that marijuana, it can be sort of a it's a sort of a homeostasis agent where it kind of keeps your body balanced, but then if you're trying to make big changes, it can kind of modulate that, or kind of buffer that. But in practice, I mean, it doesn't seem to affect things too much. But here's the caveat. So we'll talk about fat loss first. If you eat at a calorie deficit, if you're hitting that deficit and you're using marijuana, you will be fine. Nothing, like, you're gonna see the results you want, the exact results that you want. That said, I found that sometimes I get more water retention when I'm using edibles here and there. So meaning I will weigh a bit more, but that's water weight, not fat. That's me. I think I talked to other people that haven't noticed that. That might just be me. But as long as you are hitting that calorie deficit, marijuana will not slow you down. In fact, I think they actually found that people that use marijuana on average weigh less. So it could have some sort of effects on the brain that over time, over the course of several days, kind of control your eating. That said, a lot of people that use marijuana, they end up binge eating, and that will completely disrupt your fat loss. So if you're eating way too much because you're high, it's gonna mess up with your fat loss. So what I found is the best strategy if you are gonna use marijuana is, and this is what I do is I finish my calories, I finish my macros, and then maybe I'll have a little, well, the edible has a few calories, but then I'll have a little edible, and I won't really eat more, just because if you're high and you're finishing off your calories, let's say I'm finishing off the 400 calorie dessert, chocolate, it will taste so good, but then I'll just want to keep eating. Like I'll taste so satisfied, but I'll never hit that point where I'm like, oh, I'm good now. Like, I just want to keep going. So I find it's better to wait till I finish my calories for the day and then do it. Because once you're, you know, I find that being high, it's like, if you don't eat, you're fine, but once you start eating, you want to keep eating. And you guys can probably relate to that if you've tried it. there isn't too much issue using it. From my experience, I've gone through periods where I was stressed and I was just, screw it, I was taking edibles to crash like a sleep like a rock, and I had no issues with my strength and muscle gains. In fact, they were pretty much identical and very solid. That's my personal experience. You know, it's very tricky to kind of say, look at the research to kind of give any definitive answers, but you know, it seems like it might slow down some of the mTOR pathways, which are critical for muscle building. But I mean, in practice, I think it's just like, do you find it affects your strength gains? That's number one. And do you find it affects your appetite? That's number two. And if it doesn't affect your strength gains, you're good. And if it causes you to eat a lot more and your goals get lean, you might have to cut it out. And I found that sometimes, like the next day, like in the past, when I'm getting really lean, I have to just cut it out. That's what I found in the past. If I want to get really lean, I'd find that it just kind of made me want to eat more, and that might be because it is sort of a homeostasis agent where it does kind of try and keep your body balanced. So getting too lean, deviating too far from a nice healthy range, it might fight against that on some sort of level, and that kind of makes sense. So that's kind of my little spliff, pun intended, spliff. That's my little rant on marijuana. We'll have to do a follow-up on this. I just want to kind of give you more of like a anecdotal video on my experience. But you know what I will say, I think you know, I've gone through periods where, you know, I've just used edibles just to fucking sleep like a baby. But I actually prefer not to. I prefer just to get my sleep routine on point, you know, on its own through less time on my phone, through you know, meditating, and spending more time outside during the day is key for my sleep. Making sure that my caffeine intake is consistent. I don't go too high, or I don't fluctuate. If I go lower in caffeine one day and then higher, it throws my sleep off. So the one thing that's effective is when I use Kino Sleep, that has an ingredient in there that actually helps decrease the half-life of caffeine, and the ashwagandha to lower stress. So sometimes I prefer to use that, our Kino Sleep stuff. But again, like, that's kind of my video. I don't think marijuana is something that's gonna kill your gains at all. I think if you're able to do it and hit the gym properly, get your strength up, if you're able to stick to your calories and macros, then it's not really going to affect your physique too much. If you want to get really lean and shredded, it might be good to cut it out, just because I find that's when it can make things a little bit harder. But I mean, if you're someone where you are struggling with your sleep, you're struggling with maybe some anxiety, and so your recovery is diminished, and then you're using marijuana to get more sleep, to get more relaxation, then that can be something that might actually help you. But that's just kind of my video on this. You know, in Canada right now, marijuana is legal. I go to California and I go to Colorado a lot, where I have business partners, and it's legal there too. So it is becoming more widespread, legalized. But at the same time, like, I find that people that get in the habit of doing marijuana during the day frequently, like, that's a big issue. If you're getting high during the day, like, you know, I wouldn't have started Kinobody, I wouldn't have started my business if I was getting high all the time. I hadn't touched that stuff. I think it can kind of have the habit of, if you have a lot of momentum in your life and you're working really hard and you're putting in all this work and you have strong goals, then marijuana from a goal standpoint isn't a big issue. But when you don't have momentum in your life, when you do not have momentum in your life, if you're trying to get this momentum going so you can achieve your goals, you might want to cut that stuff out. Maybe once a week is fine, but you might want to cut that stuff out, because some of these things kind of keep you where you are. And so, yeah, if you have the momentum, it's okay to use in moderation, but if you don't, that's an issue. And the other thing to say on this subject is that, and I know Joe Rogan talks about this, I believe, or I've seen him talk about it, so he for sure does, is if your age is important here, and I know that I have people follow my channel that are in their mid-late 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, but there's also people that are in their teens and in their early 20s, and when your brain is still very much developing, smoking weed every day is not good. It's not good for that brain development. You have to make these neural connections first. So, and that's the biggest problem is the people that tend to smoke weed the most are the people that whose brains are still developing. So if you are in your teens, you are in your early 20s, and you're thinking about doing it, wait. Or do it once in a blue moon. Or if you are in your early 20s or late teens and you're doing it all the time, try and cut out, try and cut back. It's really important to not rely on too many things. You know, our society, there's so many people that are doing all these prescription medicines, using all these things to cope and to kind of handle their life and their stress. But the best thing to do is to learn how to do that naturally without anything. And that's when you'll feel the best, the freest, and the best able to create the life you want, when you don't have to rely on, you know, all these prescription things for you know, hey, I mean, you know what, you know your life better than me, and I don't want to tell you how to live your life, but I want to ask you a question. Is this, if you are coping and using all these things, do you think that maybe there is a solution that isn't, you know, taking all these substances or prescriptions or whatever? Because the natural solution obviously is the most important. Learning how to deal with things, and in life so many times so many things are still unclear that we're learning, and there's a big reason to do a lot of self-work. For example, you know, when I'm my happiest, when I'm my best in life, I'm meditating every day. I'll listen to 20-30 minutes of practicing Power of Now or New Earth. That's my form of meditation. I listen to a lot of Eckhart Tolle's talks and books, and I get very present, and I think it's better than meditation, but that's, you know, what I think. I'm meditating, I'm journaling, I'm looking at my to-do list, I'm looking at my goals, I'm working with a personal coach on my issues, on things I'm dealing with, and that's the best thing to do. And so I think I impress upon more people to work on themselves, so they don't need to use other things. At the same time, I've kind of gone beyond the scope of this video. Just want to make sure that if you are going to use marijuana, if you are, that, you know, it's for the right reasons, and you have left enough room and paved the way to still conquer and work towards your goals, and you're not relying on something every day to kind of get through the day and to kind of tone things down in a way. So it's an important video to make. And again, I've been in the habit of using edibles every day, and I've got in the habit of not using them, and I prefer when I'm not, just because I have a little more sharpness to me, a little more edge, a little more fire, a little more pep in the step. And I will say that last night I did take a big edible, and I think I still feel it. Just because I was on a trip, and I was on a trip and my sleep wasn't very good, and sometimes when I travel my sleep is off. My hotel is cars with me. I'm sensitive, very hypersensitive, one could say. So when I got back, I was like, I just need to take an edible, just zonk out. But yeah, that's the video. Let me know what you think.